The sun hung low over the Montana grasslands, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. As Martha pressed her hands against the weathered wooden platform, trying to steady her breathing. Her dress, torn and dusty, clung to her trembling frame, and her dark hair fell in tangled waves around her face. Behind her stood Jack the rancher, whose land she had stumbled onto just hours before. His calloused hands rested gently on her shoulders, offering support as she leaned forward, exhausted from their desperate flight across the prairie. The horse stood nearby, its flanks still heaving from the hard ride that had brought them to this abandoned homestead. Martha had been running for 3 days now. 3 days since she had fled from Samuel the man her father had promised her to. In exchange for settling his gambling debts, Samuel was twice her age, with hands that were rough and a temper that showed in his eyes. When her father had told her of the arrangement, Martha had felt something inside. Her break, she was 32 years old and had spent her life caring for her aging parents on their failing farm. Now her father wanted to trade her away like livestock, so she had taken what little she could carry and run. She had no plan and no destination, just knew she could not stay. By the second day, her food was gone and her feet were blistered and bleeding. That was when Jack had found her collapsed near his water trough, trying to drink from the bucket meant for his cattle. He could have sent her. A way many would have a strange woman alone on a man's property would cause talk in town. But Jack had taken one look at her exhausted face and simply said, "Come inside." Now, as the sun began its descent, Martha felt the full weight of her situation settle over her. She had nowhere to go and no way to support herself. Samuel would be looking for her. Her father would have told him which direction she had headed. "Please." Martha whispered, her voice hoarse. "Be gentle with me. I cannot take much more." Jack felt his heart constrict at her words. He understood she was not just talking about the physical exhaustion. This was a woman who had been pushed beyond her limits. Slowly, he guided her to sit on the edge of the platform. "You are safe here," he said quietly. "Nobody is going to hurt you. Not while you are on my land." Martha looked up at him, searching his weathered face for any sign of deception. She had learned not to trust easily, but there was something in Jack's gray eyes that reminded her of her grandfather, steadiness that spoke of integrity. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Jack sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Because someone helped me once," he said, "when I needed it most, and because it is the right thing to do." He told her, then, about his own past, how he had lost his wife Elizabeth to fever 10 years ago, how they had never been blessed with children, though they had hoped for them, how the loneliness of the ranch sometimes felt like a weight he could barely carry, but the land, he said, looking out over the prairie, keeps me going. It needs tending, and that gives a man purpose. Martha listened, feeling tears prick her eyes. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to her with such simple honesty. "My father used to be a good man," she said softly. "Before the drink took him, before my mother got sick, he used to tell me I was his prairie flower, that I would bloom into something beautiful." She laughed bitterly. "Instead, I just grew old taking care of them." "You are not old," Jack said firmly. "You are in the prime of your life, and there is nothing shameful in caring for your parents. That shows character." They sat in silence as the sky deepened to purple and the first stars began to appear. Finally, Jack stood and offered his hand. "Come," he said. "Let us get you settled for the night. Tomorrow we will figure out what comes next. But for tonight you need rest and food and safety." The ranch house was modest but clean. Jack showed Martha to a small room that had once been meant for the children he and Elizabeth never had. The bed was made up with a quilt that Elizabeth had stitched, and there was a basin of fresh water on the dresser. This was going to be the nursery, Jack said quietly, "but it has just been storage for years now. Think Elizabeth would be glad to know someone is using it." Martha felt fresh tears come. She could not remember the last time someone had shown her such kindness. Over the following days, a routine developed. Martha was too afraid to go into town where Samuel might spot her, so she stayed on the ranch at first. She felt like an intruder, but Jack made it clear her presence was welcome. She began helping with small tasks, mending his shirts, cooking meals that were more elaborate than the simple fare Jack usually prepared for himself. tending the small vegetable garden that had gone neglected since Elizabeth's death. Jack was careful never to push or pry. He gave her space when she needed it and companionship when she sought it. He taught her to ride the gentler of his horses, showing her the boundaries of his property. "These are good lands," he said as they rode across a hilltop overlooking a stream. "My grandfather homesteaded here, built everything from nothing. Sometimes I wonder what he would think of me, a man alone with all this space. You honor his memory by staying." Martha said, "By keeping it alive. That means something." One evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Martha finally told him the full story. About Samuel and her father's debts, about the fear that had driven her to run, about the shame she felt at abandoning her parents even though staying would have destroyed her. Jack listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "No one has the right to trade another person's life," he finally said. "Not even a parent. What your father did was wrong, but what you did took courage. Most people just accept what life hands them. You chose to fight for yourself." "But what do I do now?" Martha asked. "I have no money. No skills that anyone would pay for. I cannot hide here forever." "Why not?" Jack asked. The question hung in the air between them. Martha stared at him, not understanding. "I mean it." Jack continued, his voice careful. "This house is too big for one person. The ranch is more than I can properly manage alone. And if I am being honest, the loneliness sometimes feels like it might swallow me whole." He turned to look at her directly. "I am not asking anything improper," he said. "I am not Samuel. I am just saying there is a place for you here if you want it. You could help with the house and the garden. I would pay you a fair wage. And over time, if folks in town ask, we can say you are my housekeeper. Nothing scandalous about that." Martha felt something loosen in her chest, tension she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. "You would do that for me," she whispered. "We would do it for each other." Jack said, "That is how the best arrangements work. Nobody keeping score. Just two people helping each other build a life." The months that followed were the most peaceful Martha had ever known. The work was hard but satisfying. She transformed the neglected garden into something beautiful. She organized the house and filled it with small touches that made it feel like a home rather than just a place to sleep. Jack in turn taught her the ways of the ranch, how to read the weather, how to know when a cow was about to calve, how to mend fences and check the water lines. They developed an easy companionship. In the evenings they would sit together and Jack would read aloud from books while Martha did needlework. Sometimes they would just talk, sharing stories of their pasts. Martha learned that Jack had wanted to be a teacher when he was young, that he loved poetry. Though he told no one in town for fear they would think him soft, Jack learned that Martha had a gift for mathematics, that she had helped keep her father's farm accounts before the drinking got bad, that she had once dreamed of seeing the ocean, though she knew she probably never would. Winter came, and with it, isolation. The snow drifted high around the ranch house, and there were days when they could not even get to the barn. But the house was warm, and they had laid in plenty of supplies. Martha found she did not mind being snowed in. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. One evening during a particularly fierce blizzard, they sat by the fire. Jack had been reading, but he set the book aside. "Martha," he said, "I need to tell you something." She looked up from her sewing, her heart suddenly racing. "Samuel came to town in November. Jack said he was asking about you, saying you were his intended and had run away." Martha felt ice flood her veins. "What did people tell him?" she whispered, "that they had not seen?" "You," Jack said. "Most folks in town know Samuel's reputation. They were not inclined to help him." He paused. "I went into town myself, spoke to him directly, told him you had passed through months ago, that I had given you provisions, and you had headed east toward Dakota Territory." Martha stared at him. "You lied for me." "I protected what is mine," Jack said simply. Then he seemed to realize what he had said, and color rose in his weathered cheeks. "I mean what is mine to protect. You are under my roof. That makes your safety my responsibility." But there was something in his eyes that made Martha's breath catch, something that spoke of more than mere responsibility. The spring came slowly. The snow melted in patches, revealing the brown grass beneath. Martha stood at the kitchen window one morning watching Jack work with a new colt in the corral. He was patient with the young horse, speaking softly and moving slowly. Never forcing, always waiting for trust to build. She realized she had come to love him, not with the desperate passion of youth, but with something deeper. A love built on respect and shared work and quiet evenings. A love that felt solid, like the earth beneath her feet. That evening she told him. They were on the porch again, watching the stars emerge. Jack, she said, I need to tell you something. He waited, patient as always. I love you, she said simply. Not because you saved me, though you did. Not because I owe you, though I do. But because you are a good man, because you